I'm doing the intro this week. How weird is that? It's the 19th. This is your last warning that Thanksgiving, if you're in America, is rapidly approaching. Otherwise, your American friends are going to be wildly unproductive next week. This is your fair warning.
You're warning about Thanksgiving so you can seek shelter.
That's basically how it is, isn't it?
Chris is not here because we advise her against her reckless socialization. She ignores us and inevitably gets diseased.
I think we just barely dodged a bullet on that because after the last time we got together, I had the sniffles for a few days.
Yeah. She definitely was maybe not releasing spores at that time, but they were gestating. And we got a little bit of government news. Actually, this is a weird week because for a long time, because of the election, we didn't have any government news. We had all AI news, but for some reason, not a lot of AI news this week, which is unusual. But let's talk about the government and how they're interfacing with tech, which, as usual, an acrimonious situation.
CFPB looks to place Google under federal supervision, setting up a clash. So they think Google is behaving monopolistically, but they're so good at not documenting that they're behaving monopolistically that maybe they want to have a little bit more close supervision. Maybe some government agents just going to meetings.
Now, CFPB, why would they be looking into tech? What's that got to do with anything? Well, remember that Google has payments. They do that stuff. And Apple is trying to be a bank, like sneakily being a bank. So the government, at least this organization, is saying, hey, you guys have a big part in this. And it's the Wild West and no one's looking after you. And we know how you've behaved in every other aspect of your business. We want to take a look at this. Google, expectedly, not a fan of that.
When I dig into the whole banking regulation thing, it's like, deregulate, because usually I'm a fan of deregulation. If you look at how banks were required to run like in the 1850s, there were a lot more restrictions than there are today. And I'd like to bring some of those back, actually. What transpired that we lost some of those? Because it seemed like the requirements is like, if you want to operate a bank, here are the requirements for operating a bank. And they seemed a lot more reasonable then than today.
Yeah, because today they don't need deposits.
No.
Like, just have a bank. You can just use the discount window.
And those are the worst sorts of banks.
Which is the only kind we have. And the worst sorts of government is one that constantly spies on you. We've got plenty of history that teaches us that. We also have history to teach us that they will spy on you at capacity, no matter what it is. And here we now have the Secret Service, who is one in a long line of agencies who are going to purchase your data.
404's headline, which is a quote, says, FYI, a warrant isn't needed, which is what we've told you. And it's like, surely that can't be right. It's like, no, the Secret Service says you agree to be location tracked. So if the government buys that data, it's not the same as the government collecting that data. Okay, the only solution is to destroy this empire of oily rags by making it illegal to collect that data in the first place.
When they say, we're not collecting the data. It's LocateX, which is a company that integrates into a lot of apps, has all of our location data pretty much. Now, when it says a warrant isn't needed, that was from LocateX because there was somebody in the Secret Service, the hand raiser, he needs the hand raiser award, who said, hey guys, I don't know about this because a judge is going to look at this and I don't know if we want that in these cases because, this is the ground's a little shaky here. And LocateX was like, don't worry, bro. These people agreed to the terms of service, and we explicitly stated in the terms of service that we might do something like this.
So don't use, it's not even easy to, it's like, okay, I would like to preemptively tell LocateX to lose my data. You can't do that because their service is integrated in a whole bunch of other apps that you don't necessarily know about.
And more, every business is requiring you to interface with some kind of app, which is horrible. And Nvidia, it's interesting that we now look at a case in the Supreme Court that's about Nvidia being used for cryptocurrency because Nvidia these days is like, what, cryptocurrency? That's a side effect. We don't care about that at all anymore. But if you remember back in the day, they sold a lot of GPUs under that umbrella.
Supreme Court seems likely to allow a class action to proceed against tech company Nvidia. And this has to do with the crypto mining days, cryptocurrency days. It doesn't have anything to do with AI. And this is because Nvidia bundled a bunch of their sales in, and they didn't really delineate to say, hey, this stuff that we're selling has a risk if the bottom falls out of cryptocurrency. On the one hand, I can kind of see Nvidia's argument, which is, hey, we're just selling GPUs. We don't know what people use them for.
Which flies in the face of everything else that everybody does who sells this technology, right?
Yeah.
They want to know exactly what's going on. The lawsuit here is not from the government. It's just from some guy. He's saying that they didn't give him guidance when he invested in them. And when the crypto wave broke, he lost money. Now, if he would have had diamond hands, he'd be just fine, wouldn't he? Maybe it was option plays. He didn't have a choice. And one of the big things, if you followed the U.S. election, one of the things that a lot of people pointed at was Polymarket, which was a betting site where you could bet on the results of various things, one of them being the U.S. election. Now, you couldn't do that in the United States, but a VPN could quickly get around that. And a lot of people don't like that.
The FBI has seized Polymarket CEO's phone, electronics, and other stuff after the betting platform correctly predicted the Trump presidential win. Interestingly, they haven't really said what he's charged with. They're just collecting all of his stuff to see if they can charge him with anything.
Also not arrested.
Yeah. They're just it's like, oh, we got a warrant to search all your stuff. And they executed it at 6 a.m. instead of just letting his lawyer know.
Obviously.
So
could have surrendered it.
There is a preponderance of evidence here to suggest that it is politically motivated.
Well, they did uncover a whale that made a big Trump bet, but that guy also made like $40 million, right? So can we argue that he was doing that just for political purposes when he had a big win? Who knows? And also, are we going to be so swayed by that?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
No, I mean, just your point about, like, are we that much, or it's like, oh, the herd is heading that way. Everyone should head that way. I don't think that's true at all.
It's not for me. Like, if I would have woken up on election day and saw that number had completely changed, it would not have changed my vote.
Yeah. It's not anything that is, I'm not saying, that is an effect that happened. I mean, yes, it is an effect that happens. No, it probably didn't affect the outcome of anything. And no, it probably doesn't rise to the level of a criminal or national security concern. But yeah, I could believe that people would go insane over that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's say this might point to that being a little bit true, and I don't understand this at all. They don't take commissions or fees.
It's probably just the transaction fee.
No fee.
How
now, there could be a spread.
Oh, okay.
And there could be the vigorous. I don't know if they do that. You can make money both of those ways, but it's weird that, it's like, what is this supposed to be even be doing here? Who knows? They were right, though. They called the market correctly.
Yeah.
So they made money if they were running a spread, I would say. And here we have the ending to a saga that started quite a while back.
Pentagon leaker Jack Teixeira, sentenced to 15 years in prison for sharing military secrets online.
An old picture, I imagine. Looks like a child. So, yeah, he pled guilty and apologized and said he shouldn't have done that. Admitted that he was told over and over during his training, never do this. Also, his defense pointed out the requested punishment for him more than they requested for Julian Assange.
Wow.
And Gensler, the SEC chairman, hates crypto. And now we have a new regime coming in who seems to be very much pro-crypto. So what's going to happen here?
18 states sue the SEC over unconstitutional overreach of digital assets. And I find myself looking at the type of overreach that's happening, and I think about all the banking regulations, such as this person deposited $500 in cash. We need to make a separate note in a separate ledger to flag that transaction. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like $5,000 in cash from your own bank account? That's also going to have to be logged.
Or you just can't even have it. We don't do that anymore. We don't give the money back. So, yeah, that does seem like a little bit of a double standard, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe those 18 states will be not far behind to say, yes, property rights, trump all of this other stuff.
Now, this was updated. An update to the update that was in this story, and this was actually postponed. They took these off the docket for that day because they said that, like mean voices were speaking out. They didn't like it. They needed some time.
Tell Congress we can't afford more bad patents. So this is an EFF Action Center article that explains how companies are trying to push through the ability to patent vague things. See also the Nintendo Pal World patent situation. It would be even worse than that because the more you dig into the whole Nintendo versus Pal World thing is ridiculous. But this would be a open up a can of worms for companies being able to patent vague things to do with game mechanics or business mechanics and not what the patent system was originally intended for. This would also open up the can of worms for software patents, which is mostly, like, you could probably, if you came up with a new compression algorithm, probably that's been patentable all along. But I'm going to build a really nifty spreadsheet application, probably not patentable.
So that is Para and Prevail. Both of those have been shelved. It was supposed to be yesterday as we're filming it, last Thursday for you. But again, they did not do it because they were afraid they would fail, so they're going to put them away and try again. That's a tried and true government tactic when you have an unpopular bill. And this should be unpopular because of, national sovereignty. But no, everybody loves it.
Biden administration wants to support controversial UN cyber treaty. One of the aspects of this that's most troubling is that basically needing your national ID card as a way to function online.
And
that's not all of it either.
And the copyright cartel will have carte blanche to cross borders, go after whoever they want, do whatever they want. And it's kind of like a Patriot Act for cybercrime, which...
cybercrime, in this case, also includes streaming episodes of things that are still in copyright, like Green Acres.
Or operating a betting platform about politics.
It's like, I don't know that we could really, does that really rise to the level of cybercrime? If you and your Discord friends get together to watch a movie on a private Discord, is that some sort of heinous cybercrime? And in the view of these sociopaths, the answer is yes.
And they will be given global governance in which to enforce that, which countries just roll over, show their bellies. Why would we do that? And why would we let these two companies ever come anywhere near each other? My God.
Anthropic and Palantir partner to bring Claude AI models to AWS for U.S. government intelligence and defense operations.
As usual, they're quick to point out, no, we're not making weapons. No.
I guarantee you, if you turn the AI toward defense spending, it would uncover a lot of fraud really quickly.
Oh, yeah, they would just like that. So this will be more about logistics and processing all the various data that's coming off the battlefields and stuff like that. I'm sure it quickly will adapt itself into combat roles as well, as soon as they figure out how well it works. And here's a flashback. Wasn't it around this time last year that we had the other meeting?
Yeah. Experts testify before lawmakers that the U.S. is running a secret unidentified aerial phenomenon program. And this was amazing. Like, the live stream for this, you should go watch, because they literally said we have technology that is not of Earth origin and biological material that is probably not of Earth origin, or at least if it is of Earth origin, it is from a higher dimension that we don't comprehend.
At least one of these guys had some decent credentials. He was a rear admiral, an ex-rear admiral, and he claims he's seen it himself. There also was one guy, I don't know if it was him, but one guy, he said, I have to be careful because I've signed paperwork that I'm not allowed to discuss certain things. And the guy asking the question is like, so it must exist if you're not allowed to answer questions about it. He said, yeah.
My favorite thing with all of this is, it's like, oh, maybe we figured out how to defeat gravity, or maybe we figured out how to whatever. Some of the testimony there was just insane, and some of it could be a psyop. So, one of the things that people love to point to with all that on, you remember the disappearance of flight MH370? The Pentagon literally has a psychologist operations person, but a lot of the MH370 footage that's online comes from Video Hive, and the videos that are out there are put together from video tutorial sites and samples that have been online forever for things like a disappearing airplane, because supposedly we have video of this airplane disappearing after some orbs circle it, which I think is itself a disinformation campaign.
So last time nothing happened.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they made the same kind of claims. What's going to happen this time? Probably nothing, right? What if it's true and they're ready to reveal it because they've lost power, and you're Elon Musk and you're like, I'm on top of the world, I'm launching rockets, and they're like, we don't need you anymore.
Well, it's funny because Elmo commented on this, and he said that he hasn't seen, with Starlink and everything else, he hasn't seen anything unexplainable, which is interesting.
Yeah, but how much are his hands actually get dirty and all that? He just rides in at the end.
I do think we're long overdue for having figured out, the fundamental forces of the universe or something, because we've come a long way in the last 2,500 years or so. Like a long way. When you think about that, 2,500 years really isn't that long to go from 2,500 years ago to we're putting the lightning in the rock, and, it's general artificial intelligence seems like it's on the horizon.
The fundamental forces of the universe in a, human or life form based universe are fear, greed, and lust. And Amazon has a lot of that greed, and they don't like letting their employees get all uppity.
Amazon can't force employees into anti-unionization meetings. So this is the National Labor Relations Board, and the Amazon lawyers really worked their tail off to try to figure out how they're able to have anti-union meetings. And at the end of the day, Amazon can have meetings that you can optionally attend, paid, where they talk about stuff, but they're not allowed to take attendance, and they're not allowed to make a permanent file or a permanent record of whether or not you attended, and they're not required they're not allowed to require you to attend, but that's it. If you want to have your own meeting about stuff, you can.
Is there any space in an Amazon warehouse where your attendance is not already being tracked?
No.
So it makes that's a moot point, right?
The SQL statement is going to be like, select star from employees where clocked in and location unknown. It's like, oh, this is everybody that attended the anti-union meetings.
Everybody who took off their tracking bracelet during this time. It's like one of those Google warrants.
Yeah.
And speaking of unions, Massachusetts, when you have an election, sometimes you have these amendments that go on, and they have made a union decision.
Massachusetts voters allow Uber and Lyft drivers to unionize. Uber and Lyft was basically saying that everybody is independent contractors, so they can't get together. That doesn't make sense, you're independent contractors getting together. But Massachusetts said, nah, it's close enough.
Also, they dictate a lot of their behavior, what they can do, when they can do it.
Yeah.
They treat them like employees.
I think that I really hope that I always look at Uber and Lyft as like Uber and Lyft can be a kind of canary in the coal mine for societal change and positive change for technology and so on and so forth. Uber and Lyft fundamentally as a business should not be a huge margin business. Like I do some labor, I get paid. And the worker doing most of the labor should collect most of the wages. The app really isn't doing anything. The legal and insurance and customer service infrastructure really isn't wildly expensive compared to the work the driver is doing. And so if these kinds of things like unionization tip the scales back and forth in the direction of the worker, I think that motivates people to be a lot more entrepreneurial and might solve some economic and social problems if more of society were like that.
What if we just said, hey, your transportation, your power, your water, your telecommunication, you're critical, right? We've identified them as critical infrastructure. I don't know if we did Uber and Lyft, but they're transportation, right? If we're going into this green new world.
If we're going to sabotage trains.
So how about we say, if you are one of those, you don't get to go public, ever, for any reason.
You have your profit margin capped at your operating expenses plus 5%?
No, that's not American. You just can't go public. You cannot have that pressure to destroy the product to try to reap the constant profit.
It used to be that the MO for the company was for the public good. Like you could have a for-profit private company, but you still had an impetus in your charter that was for the public good. That would also be okay.
Well, let's talk about the EU. They claim to be better at all of these kinds of things, and they are certainly better at targeting the tech companies.
EU slaps Meta with a nearly 800 million euro fine for engaging in quote-unquote abusive marketplace practices. Seems a little egregious for the particular violation, but okay.
So they're claiming that Facebook knows everything about you. We know that's true. And they know all of your traffic and all of that stuff, and they used all of that to advertise marketplace to you, whether you wanted that or not, and whether you wanted them to use that data for that or not, which squeezed out any other kind of online marketplace.
So I was thinking about this, and I had just read the article about Internet Explorer, which is I think in the business section tomorrow, and I was thinking, how is what Meta is doing, any different than what Microsoft is doing with Windows when we talk about Explorer or Edge and everything else? In fact, I think that what Microsoft is doing with Edge and Bing is far more egregious than what Meta was doing with Marketplace.
Certainly more visible.
Yeah. And it's like, does it get a pass because it's an application, not a website? That doesn't seem right.
We probably just haven't gotten around to it yet. We could probably make quite a bit of money just advising the European Union on who to go after.
Yeah. It's just like, we're going over after $800 million for the Craigslist clone run by 3 guys in the corner of Meta's office. And it's like, get us some bigger targets here. Let's go for some juicier, a little bit more meat on the bones.
We'll take 1%. 1% commission on that consulting. And in the UK, which is also in Europe but not the European Union, they have a problem with Apple.
Apple faces UK iCloud monopoly compensation claim worth $3.8 billion.
So they're saying that Apple got you into the cloud, started letting you use the cloud, basically forced you into it. You know, it's like the whole local file system. What's that, user? And then jacked up the prices and made it really difficult for you to do anything else.
Yeah, consider the magic of Apple's engineering. If you had a Mac at home with terabytes of storage, Apple literally could just say, hey, why don't we just offload your storage onto your home Mac? Your internet connection is this good, and we'll just, instead of using cloud storage, we'll just store your iPhone stuff on your home Mac. Like, that could be something that Apple engineers could do in about 30 minutes. Instead, even third parties developing similar applications face a lot of roadblocks being able to do that.
And another thing about the European Union is they're big on this whole like borderless situation, which has a lot of problems. But if you're going to do it, then everybody should be paying the same price, right? We're all one. We're all in this together. Apple does not tolerate that at all.
Apple gets EU warning to stop geo-blocking on the app and iTunes stores. Wow, this is amazing. This is another one where we could have consulted for the European Union. I think it was like the second or third episode ever of this that we did, when we were just trying to figure stuff out at the crazy bar top desk. And Valve got this warning from the EU because they were charging less for games in poorer countries. And the EU said, you can't do that. And we said, lol, somebody don't tell them about the Apple App Store. That's taken a large number of years that they could have been collecting money.
And look how the key sites are treated.
Yeah.
Who go and collect the cheap ones and resell them.
Almost treated like criminals.
Almost. And here Apple is. I mean, it's going to be a slap on the wrist. It'll be a lot of money, but still.
Here's a mind-blowing thing for the audience. So for the key advertising things, sometimes the keys are stolen, and that is true. But that is also somewhat subterfuge. So if you buy a Windows key in, say, Estonia or Lithuania or there's a couple other European countries, and there's a couple EU countries, Windows legit costs less there. But in the U.S. first sale doctrine, if I go there and buy things and then import them here, that's cool. That's capitalism. And so that's why Microsoft has been reticent about really cracking down on keys. But game companies are happy to just crap all over you. And that's also why some of the CD key sites persist. But here's the really insane thing. On this platform, if we were to run a pre-roll ad for some of those things, the lawyers will come in and say, oh, you're advertising for something that's pirated, when it is not actually pirated. But it's not a battle that we can win. This has affected a lot of other channels because they're like, wait a minute, I don't understand. It's not pirated keys, not if you're careful.
Also think about compare how these, globalist entities treat digital products in this situation versus cheap Chinese manufactured garbage,
Yeah.
which they beg to be imported and used.
Yeah, it's like imagine buying a book and the publishing company releases some aerosol over your warehouse to make all the books dissolve. And it's like, oh, we put a special thing in our books to make them dissolve. They've literally deprived you of your property and you have no recourse.
Well, you also have no recourse if you've been watching the Premier League for free over in the UK, because once again, this is information that is weaponized and must be destroyed.
Man jailed for more than 3 years for loading illegal streaming services onto Amazon Fire Sticks. Now he didn't. This is also another one that's really interesting. He put links to web pages and apps on the devices that were capable of tapping into, the darker aspects of the internet to retrieve pirated material. He himself did pirate a little bit. And he was warned, hey, stop it. This is kind of a gray area, but we will find something that you have done that is illegal. And that is exactly what they did. And it's 3 years and 4 months that he's going to be in prison.
Although I didn't see anything in this that made me think that he actually put any media.
He did not.
Right.
He was very careful to do that. And that was why he was flagrantly like, no, I'm not putting media on this. This is okay.
Obviously, the Premier League very powerful in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like, if MLB or NFL over here tried to do something. And it sounded like they actually prepared the case. Did you get that impression?
Yes. Yeah.
So here you go. Just go get him.
Yeah.
And they have that power because they're super rich. And Canada had, I saw this headline a couple of places that sounded pretty good. And you think, oh, yeah, this sounds great. But the Register has poured cold water all over it.
Canada passes new right to repair rules with the same old problem. And that is, you have the right to repair it, but you're not allowed to circumvent anything that would let you figure out how to repair it. You just have to know how to repair it in the first place without, circumventing any technological protection measures.
So the ice cream machine is the perfect example here. Some company came up with the solution. They didn't make it free. They sold it, but it was still not allowed to be used because it's circumvented. So in this case, I guess, yes, you could fix your ice cream machine, but you still can't buy the software because you can't circumvent it.
I think it would be really interesting if we did a video on this kind of thing, because a lot of the arguments are really framed a lot more complicated in a lot more complicated fashion than they need to be. Do you remember? You remember like the old patent system where? Remember like a Briggs and Stratton motors? I think this is how Briggs and Stratton. So like it was an internal combustion motor, and then Stratton came along and it's like, well, I've got a really cool modification to this motor that's patented, but I'm going to patent my modification. And so you would have to buy the motor and then buy the thing that modified the motor to make it a Briggs and Stratton motor that was actually really good. In the world of the copyright out of control, you could never do that. Like if I wanted to buy a Nintendo console and mod it, not for the purposes of piracy, but to just make it do something really incredible, modern copyright law will just crush that kind of innovation and entrepreneurship and the same kind of thing.
It'll crush it if the company is powerful enough.
Yeah.
If you just invent something and you're nobody,
yeah, I'm just a rando.
You'll get no protection.
Yeah.
Nintendo will come along and take your thing.
Yeah.
Which we've seen how many times with Microsoft and Google.
See also Pal World?
Well, who was the company where Google met with them and they were like, we really want this? And the person was like, no, I don't think so. And then Google was like, okay. And then they just made a copy of it.
A lot of examples. Sonos is probably one of the bigger examples because they were going to partner and then Google's just like, nah, we'll just do this because software and some other stuff. But this is like a fundamental misunderstanding. It is basically, it's like there is no, if I buy a video game console and a video game, if I buy a Super Nintendo and a Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time, it should be enshrined in law that I am able to format and ship of Theseus that, format shift and ship of Theseus that into whatever I want. Not pirate it, not give away copies, not anything like that. It's like I'm going to transfer the essence of this thing into something else and enjoy the copyrighted material that I've bought. Just like if I bought a book and I wanted to record myself reading it so that I could listen to myself play it, that would be okay. First sale. Like this is We got to do a video on this to like reframe the argument, because the companies are brainwashing. There's going to be too many people in the comments that are like, it's like, no, property rights trump all. I bought this. I didn't buy the copyright to it, but I bought this, and I can do what I want with this thing. I can modify the engine with this thing that's patented in order to make the engine better. That is okay. That is not verboten.
You made a very pedantic mistake there, but I'm going to leave it because I want the engagement.
Sorry.
And Krista abandons us when we need her the most, when she loves saying this word.
Saudi Arabia's Neom replaces its CEO amid reports of delays and cutbacks, and to subtitle, and to make Western media happy because they're increasingly like, WTF is going on over there.
Hey guys, what about all these deaths?
Yeah.
So somebody reported that it's supposed to be 100 miles, and they've cut it to 1.5 miles.
Turns out it's wildly expensive.
But Saudi Arabia says that's fake news. We're still doing it.
I mean, it does seem like it would be good to get the first mile and a half operational, and then
learn some lessons
Yeah.
along the way.
Like if you're building a Death Star, get the life support online. It's like, we're going to get the last bolt in place before we turn the whole thing on. Doesn't seem really efficient.
Maybe we should advise them as well. And Australia has made a very interesting announcement, although this was really light on details. Exactly how they're going to do this wasn't covered.
Australia to make big tech liable for citizens' online safety. I was thinking about this story, and I had a wild idea, and that was, in order to unlock increasing levels of the internet, you had to either sign a disclaimer or take a test. And it's like, okay, Grandma, we're going to give you a phishing test. I should give this guy my bank account numbers. Okay, you're going to go into the walled garden. You can only go to Disney, Fox News, and like 2 other websites.
It's getting dangerously close to eugenics. Good luck to them, I suppose. They have not in the past seemed to make the right decisions when it comes to that kind of thing.
Also, this is stealth backdoor ID to get online.
Yeah, for sure. Which is not even stealth, right? They've already announced it.
Yeah.
We're doing it. And it's not very stealthy over in Hong Kong these days because the mainland China has taken over, and the same rules are applying in Hong Kong these days.
Hong Kong are charged with sedition under Article 23 security law over social media posts. I had to do quite a bit of digging to find the actual social media posts, and I'm not sure that the translation is accurate, but it was very, in my opinion, innocuous. It was something along the lines of, it's like, we people really should stand up to these bullies that are in the new administration, and something since taken over, this is not right. And that's sedition? Really?
So this law is one of the new ones that came about in the big Hong Kong revolution. It's been used 3 times in the past. I can't remember the third one, but the first one was a guy wore a T-shirt with a slogan on it. The second one, somebody wrote some graffiti on a bus seat.
Yeah.
And in each time, it was several years of prison sentence.
Yeah. I was also really disappointed with this exact same kind of news coming out of London. We have, I think, one of those. Or no, I don't know if it was in our news list, but I saw it this week where somebody had posted something like a year ago, and they were arrested because it was like, this is inciting intolerance. There was somebody else that were sentenced to a few months in jail because they posted a video of like an unruly mob that appeared to be of a certain ethnic descent causing havoc, and that was very divisive, apparently.
I want to disturb you here. There's not just one of those. There's many, many, many of those.
Yeah, that doesn't seem a lot different to what's going on in Hong Kong, and I don't think either one of them are right.
Definitely not. Moving on to social media, one of the things that came from the election is that people are angry at Elon Musk, and so they are abandoning his platform. Some people benefit from that.
The Verge's headline is Bluesky has crossed the 15 million user mark. It's grown quickly as people search for X/Twitter alternatives.
But that's not the only place they're going.
Meta to introduce ads on Threads in early 2025.
Which means they're also getting a bunch of new users. I didn't realize it was ad-free up until this point. Like, can you imagine getting into it and then all of a sudden there's ads? Like, wouldn't that turn you off completely?
I also think it's really, I always go back to the story that we did on Threads that Zuckerberg was faced with a catch-22. People literally would not sign up for Threads because it required them to log in with Facebook, and people were like, screw this, I'm out. Because they got such a bad, like the internet was hostage until you log in with Facebook. And that was such a terrible experience for everybody. It's like, that seems reasonable. That's easier than remembering my username and password. And then all the terrible stuff that came with that. And then fast forward a few years, and then we're at Threads and log in with Facebook. It's like, no, I remember what that was like the last time I did that. I'm not going to do that.
It drives me crazy. Anytime I need to look at a menu or get information about a business that doesn't have a website, now what they do is they pop up the nag when you first get to the website, but there's a close button. Then if you scroll down, it comes back, but there's no close button. Isn't that a dark pattern? Don't we have laws about that now?
Yeah.
And Horizon Worlds, the metaverse. Remember, this is the future, except it wasn't the future. No one cares about it. We're onto AI now, and that's a real thing. So it's still out there, but it's just languishing. However, it is now being used.
Meta Horizon Worlds has been taken over by children. You should go look on YouTube for videos of this, because there's a video of just some person that's like, let's take a look at this and see what it's about. And 12-year-old sounding voices show up and start calling him racist things, and the YouTube algorithm just doesn't know what to do.
Apparently the Quest 2, is it the 2 that's the cheap one? The cheap Quest is being gifted to children around the country or world, and they are using it to go on to Horizon Worlds and form feral gangs, apparently.
What an amazing conversation to have with your children. It's like, okay, I know that like there's an evolutionary impetus for you to imprint your social practices based on, how your peers are acting, but you're kind of a shut-in, and the other children that are neglected are not the group that you should imprint upon.
Well, and a great way, if you do have those kids, a great way to prepare them for the lifetime of surveillance that they will be experiencing is to get this going on their Snap account.
Snapchat will let parents track their kids through Family Center. Yeah, I was thinking about the Cycle of Abuse cartoon where it's like the great-grandfather is yelling at the fathers, and then it's like, no, I'm going to break the cycle. It's like,
my government spies on me, so I spy on my children.
Yeah.
Who do the children spy on? And those cartoons, it's usually the dog. And Twitter in the crosshairs, of course, constantly. And there's this weird argument that we found with the dying media landscape of, hey, everybody come and read our stories, but don't post the headlines. How dare you? How dare you push traffic to our sites?
The Guardian's headline is French news titles sue X over allegedly running their content without payment. So it'll be interesting to see how this lawsuit plays out.
Now, this is going to be a 230 argument. But with Trump taking and the Republicans in power, what do you think goes on with 230? Because they've been very critical of it.
I think that they've been critical of 230 because they're not able to shut down certain kinds of things. It's bad because both red and blue want to control companies, and I think that's a terrible idea in either case.
Are you saying that they might just completely flip-flop based on what is gaining them power right now? Like they might actually introduce the idea and then totally backtrack 4 or 5 years later?
That's my prediction. Trump expected to try to halt TikTok bans, allies say. Listen, the only fix for this is just more education. You have to use your brain and not fall into an echo chamber. I know it's hard.
Let me just remind you about the story of the people that didn't know that Biden dropped out of the race until Election Day.
Okay, Socrates was right then. You're going to have to go through some sort of a quiz or something to get your voter card.
We can't do that because the people in charge of the quiz are going to have a bias. But we just put AI in charge, right? Just let AI decide.
Speaking of 2,500 years ago, we've come so far, and yet not. This is exactly what Socrates was talking about. This exactly.
So yeah, if you remember, Trump was very anti-China, and he wanted everything Chinese to be blocked, especially TikTok. But now, I think he saw some numbers that TikTok helped him in the election, and so he wants to keep it.
The most insane thing to me about all of everything is that there are a lot of Americans that are, and people around the world too, that are smart and hardworking and willing to work hard and willing to put up with a lot of crap, but literally all of the energy is going toward fending off or just digging out from nonsense. It's like, can we have the coalition of reasonable people who want to do away with everything being needlessly complicated and just get back to things that are productive?
No, but another part of that, maybe the biggest part of that, is that let's say that we are the reasonable people. I don't know if we can claim that, but our wealth and thus our power is being consolidated at the top more and more and more with every passing year. So our agency is continually being bled out in kind of a covert way.
Yeah. Well, think about the politicians, though. They have not been able to, like, even if you could make the argument that business owners, whether sociopathic or business brilliance or whatever, that are doing wealth accumulation, all right, fine, set that aside. But politicians are accumulating wealth mostly sociopathically, and they're accumulating in exactly the same way that you describe, to the extent that they are no longer connected to the people that they govern.
Nor are the tech billionaires who are making all of these decisions.
Well, I'm saying that even if in the grand tapestry of things, it's like the ants don't necessarily, or the bees don't necessarily understand what happens to the honey after the people come and collect it. Maybe there's an argument to be made for that for the tech billionaire. I don't think so. But the politicians are just like the tick that made me where I can't eat meat anymore.
They are definitely that. It's a great thing to end on. We don't have Krista today, so we can't say bye.
Bye.